Hi, we're here today at Kershaw Instrumentation to talk about our roll length counter model RLC 2013. The purpose of this machine is to accurately measure the length of rolled paper products such as toilet paper, paper towels, and also we have modified versions of this machine that are used for cash register, ribbons, and products of that type. We'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of this discussion. I want to start out by just telling you about some of the basic mechanical components in this machine and what the function of them are. We're going to start at the top. This area of the machine is the spindle where the roller is, the rolled product is actually installed. We're going to do that a little bit in a moment. In the back of the machine we have what we're referring in the manual as the top roller. And the purpose of this top roller is there is a sensor on the shaft of this rotating roll that measures the speed that the product is passing through, and also it accurately measures the length or how much product passes through during the test. We have an intermediate roller here. The purpose of this intermediate roller is that regardless of the size of the roll or whether we install it either clockwise or counterclockwise, the web's going to go under this intermediate roll, and that ensures that we get a consistent wrap around this top roll at all times, and we'll demonstrate that when we actually run the test. The next thing in the line of control here is, you probably can't see it from the video, but right here where I'm pointing there is a sensor that's looking up, and what that is, that's the end of sheet detector. And what that does is when the end of the sheet passes that detector, it stops the test, turns off the motor, and it will store the length and sheet count values over on the display. This roller here in the front is our actual drive roller. It's driven by a variable speed motor, which is under the apron here. That's actually going to rotate, and this is what's actually pulling the sheet through the machine. Now we have two ways that we can actually operate this machine. If we want to load into a recycle bin, we would merely just have the sheet feed right out into a recycle bin that would be placed on the floor. If we want to wind the sheet up, then we'll give it a few wraps around this wind-up mandrel, and we'll actually be able to wind the sheet up as we pay it out, and we'll demonstrate that when we run the test as well. The next part of our description is going to be on the flat screen PLC, which contains all of the controls for this test. So we're going to get zoomed in on the flat screen, and then we're going to talk about each of these screens in a little bit of detail. The next part of our discussion, we're going to describe the flat screen PLC and the controls. When we initially start this machine, it will default to the screen that we have here. This is the screen that is also present at the end of a test. Now, on this display, you will see the roll length. The number of the previous test will remain on that display until we start the next test. Over here we have the number of sheets that were present on the last roll of the last test, and again that number will remain until we start the next test. Down here we have the number of or the length of the particular sheet on the rolled product that we're running, and we are able to actually key in what that value is, either in inches or millimeters, depending on whether we're running in the English mode or the metric mode. Over here, this is our, the green button is our actual start button, and our yellow is a resume. They're almost the same. With the start button, when we press that, it's going to reset our roll length and our sheet count. So we're going to be starting a new test from the beginning. The resume button will start the test as well, but it will not reset these numbers. So for example, if we put a new roll on and we're starting a new test, we'll always use the green button to start. It will reset all of our values to begin the test. If for some reason we stop a test in the middle and we want to continue on, we can use the yellow resume button, and that will restart the test, but it will not reset these buttons. Hence, we can continue on with the test and get an accurate number. Down below here we have several buttons which we're going to talk about in a moment. But what I'm going to show you is when we actually start a test, what's happening is we go over to this screen, which is our test running screen. And on the test running screen, we have the speed, and you can see the roll length changing as the test progresses. The sheet count is changing. We can stop that at any time by pressing the red button. And also I can change those values from English to metric simply by pressing this English metric button down at the bottom. Now what's happening is when I'm in the English mode, our values are in feet and feet per minute, and then when I'm in the metric mode, they're now in meters and meters per minute, and our sheet length is in centimeters. I can stop the test any time simply by pressing the stop button. Now, looking at some of these other screens, we have what we call a test screen, and the purpose of this is simply to see if this machine, if all of the components in this machine are operating properly. For example, I have this jog button, and by pressing that, it will just run the motor momentarily. The idea being is that I can test the operation of the motor simply by depressing this button. There's also a description of each of these buttons next to it. If I cover the end of sheet sensor, which I'm going to do now, you'll see this next one change color. It changes from red to green, and that's showing that the end of sheet sensor is working properly. And then if I rotate the top roller, you'll see the third button actually change from red to green as I rotate, and that tells us that the length sensor is working properly. We also have a simulate mode. I won't go into a lot of detail on this, but if we go to the simulate mode, it allows us to actually run a test when I hold this without running the motor. And the only purpose of this is really just to check all the math and make sure that your sheet length division, number of sheets, and all of that is working as you would anticipate. If you go back to that simulator, there's a description here that describes exactly what the purpose and the function of that simulator mode. I think it's pretty straightforward. We talked about the English metric button. We can change our test at any time, either if it's operating or if it's not operating, simply by pressing our English to metric conversion button. We also have some help screens here. I have a help button, and if I press that, if I simply touch any of the functions that are on here, it will give me a description of what that function is for. To give you an example, if I want to know what the resume button is used for, I touch that and it gives me a description of all of the buttons that are involved. Or if I want to know what the sheet count is, it gives me a description of what all the digital readouts are. So that kind of walks you through each and every one of the features. The only other feature we really need to talk about is to calibrate. We have a calibrate button, and that's actually password protected so that your operator out on the floor doesn't have access to get in and change any of these parameters. But what we have with the calibration is if we check the speed and we determine that the speed is off a little bit, we can go in and add just change the calibration number that's involved with that to get the proper speed. If you go into the manual, it will tell you how to calculate what these calibration factors are. These calibration factors are factory set, and generally once they leave the factory, there really isn't a need to change either the speed or the length. The only one that we may want to change is the length, the leader length, and we're actually going to talk about that in the next section. So we're going to move on to the next section, where we're actually going to install a roll on the machine, and we'll walk through the procedure of how to thread the machine, and then we're going to talk about a few of the other features. Okay, what I have here, we're going to use for our demonstration purposes. I just have a standard sheet of toilet tissue. Now you'll notice it has a glue line on here, which is significant, and you can see the glue line has gone through to several layers. So to install this roll, we're just going to slide off this collar, and we're going to install the roll. And it really doesn't matter whether we install it clockwise or counterclockwise. because as I had described earlier in our in the presentation, we have this intermediate roller which we're going to pass the sheet under, and then we're going to pass it around the top roll. And to do that, we just get the end and just kind of rotate it around, and the end will feed through. Now you'll notice with this intermediate roll, as this roll diameter changes, or if I had installed it in the other direction, our wrap angle around the top roll it will stay consistent regardless. And that's important because this top roller is what's accurately measuring the length of the sheet. Now here's the end of sheet sensor, so the sheet's going to pass over that, and we're going to pay out enough material so we can wind this thing up. Now there's a few things we're going to do here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to tear these perforations back a little bit, and using a caliper, I will measure the length of the sheet. And in this case, it is looks like it measures 3.75 inches. So we're going to go over here and on our sheet length area, we're going to key in 3.75 inches, and we're going to enter that in. Now what it will do is it's going to take the overall length of this roll, which is in feet, and it's going to divide by 3.75 inches to calculate the number of sheets that are present on this roll. But also, you'll also notice, and this product is actually pretty good, but on a lot of these products, because of the glue line, you get maybe the first foot of the sheet, or the first foot and a half, is a bit ragged. We've got some tears in here. We have the glue line here, the glue line there. Now you got to remember, the test is going to end all the way back here at the sensor. So what we did is we built a feature here that will allow us to compensate for that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to measure what this is, and I'm going to make this a nice even round number of 2 feet. So as you can see here, I have 2 feet of material that I have paid out here before we even start the test. So what we're going to do is we go over here to the calibration section. We enter the password, and we go to the leader, and it's 24 inches. So we'll key in 24. So what that's telling the system is that whatever length we actually measure, we're going to add this 2 foot to make up for what we've used up here at the beginning of the test. Now what I suggest is that you come up with a lead length that is typical for all your products. You key that in there, and then you don't have to key that in again each and every time. You just merely measure out 2 feet of material, wind it up on the wind-up shaft like I'm doing here, and we're going to drop that nip roll down by lifting the handle, and now we're ready to start the test. Now I have just loaded this up. I have no core on this wind-up sheet. However, if you wanted to put a cardboard core on there, you can wind up on that as well, but it's not necessary. It'll wind up on itself. So we're going to go ahead and begin the test, and I'll talk about what's happening as it runs. So you can see we're feeding the material off here, going around the intermediate roll, over the top sensing roll, passing over the end of test sensor, and it's being wound up here. And if we look over here on the displays, we're at 150 feet per minute roughly. Our roll length is going up 49, 50, 52, 54 feet. Here's our sheet count over here, which is merely the roll length divided by the sheet length. Now, I can stop the test at any time, and if I hit resume, it's just going to pick up right where it left off. You can see the roll length and the sheet count are still continuous from before. Now we're going to go ahead and let this run out, and at the end of this test it will automatically shut off when the trailing edge of the paper crosses over the end of length sensor. Also, if I press the metric key, everything is changed to meters and so forth, and I can press it back to English. And you can see our rewound roll actually winds up very nicely. We're approaching the end of the roll. And when our trailing edge passed the sensor, it shut off the test. Now in this case, 285 feet. Now in reality, we only actually measured 283 feet because we had that 2-foot extension at the end. But it added that 2 feet to give us an accurate measurement. And it took the 285 feet divided by 3.75 inches and comes up with 912 sheets on this particular roll. And that concludes the testing part of this. Now, a few other comments. In addition to testing these standard toilet paper type rolls, we can also test jumbo type paper towel rolls such as I have here. Same process. We have a bigger spindle. We have a bigger roll, but it fits on the same spindle. We have the same glue line situation that we have. And we would just simply unwind that and feed it through and run the test exactly the same way. We also have special applications where we've built machines like this with custom spindles that are either smaller to accommodate rolls such as this. These are cash register receipt rolls, and we use a small spindle on the top and a small spindle on the rewind, and we can accurately measure the length of rolls like this. Obviously this is a non-perforated product, and so is this, so the sheet length or the number of sheet count really doesn't apply to this type of product. Also, for the jumbo rolls, which would be a roll like this with a large 4-inch diameter core, we make a jumbo roll adapter that will fit on here, which is essentially like a cone that will fit on here to support the larger jumbo rolls. So that concludes our test on the roll length counter and our description of all of the operating controls.